Okay, you're going to love this one. Homework was invented as a punishment. Not education, not practice, not a noble little bridge between school and home, a punishment. The story goes that in 1905, in Venice, Italy, a teacher named Roberto Nevilis had a problem. His students were lazy, wouldn't study, wouldn't behave, and wouldn't take his class seriously. So Roberto invented a punishment so elegant, so cruel, and so annoyingly scalable that it escaped his classroom. He made students keep working after school was over, at home, the one place school wasn't supposed to follow you. Apparently it worked. Students learned discipline, other teachers copied him, schools copied them, and eventually the whole planet inherited Roberto Nevilis' terrible little idea. Every worksheet, every book report, every Sunday night staring at a math packet like it personally betrayed you. All of it traces back to one annoyed Italian man in 1905. Isn't that incredible? It's the perfect story, which is exactly how you know it's nonsense. Roberto Nevilis didn't invent homework. He wasn't a famous teacher. He never existed at all. There are no good records, no famous school, no original source, no dusty Italian archive where a librarian whispers, "Yes, the homework man." He shows up where suspiciously tidy answers multiply. Clickbait blogs, essay help websites, and search engine slop that needed a clean answer to who invented homework. And once a fake answer is short enough for a school essay, it becomes very hard to kill. Some versions say 1905, some say 1095, which is a bold year to pick because that's before the First Crusade. If your homework origin story accidentally involves medieval Europe, maybe check another tab. So no, there was no single villain with a quill pen and a grudge. But that doesn't make the real story nicer, it makes it bigger. The Roberto story survived because it feels emotionally correct. Homework feels like something a person invented while angry. You want a name on the complaint form? One teacher, one bad day, one terrible brainstorm. The internet was happy to provide that. A fake inventor gives you a clean beginning, an essay's first paragraph, a headline's answer, and a tiny cardboard villain to throw tomatoes at. But the real origin of homework isn't one cranky teacher. It's an education system built to shape obedient citizens. So if you're looking for the real villain, don't picture Venice, picture Prussia. Rewind to the early 1800s. Prussia is building one of the first major systems of compulsory schooling. One important part was the Volksschule, the people's school. Yes, it taught reading, writing, arithmetic, and religion. But the deeper goal wasn't just making tiny people better at fractions. It was making disciplined subjects, punctual subjects, orderly subjects. People who could follow instructions, respect authority, and fit neatly into a state that liked neatness very much. School was where children learned facts, but also the rhythm of obedience. Sit here, stand now, copy this, memorize that. Homework fit perfectly into that machine. It extended school beyond the schoolhouse and made habits of discipline follow you home. It turned your kitchen table into a very small government office. That's the key difference. Homework wasn't born as one teacher's punishment. It grew inside a system that wanted children to practice compliance, every day. Then the idea crosses the Atlantic. In the 1840s, American education reformer Horace Mann visits Prussia and is impressed. He sees a public school system that's organized, disciplined, and far more centralized than what most Americans had. So he brings the model home. Not a perfect copy though. Ideas always pick up a few changes when they cross an ocean. But Prussian influence becomes part of the American common school movement, and homework comes along for the ride. In America, it starts to look less like state discipline and more like academic seriousness. A good school is demanding. A serious teacher assigns work. A responsible child keeps studying after the bell. That sounds normal now, but for many American families, home wasn't supposed to be an annex of school. Kids worked on farms. Kids helped around the house. Kids were also, and this is easy to forget, kids. So as homework spread, the backlash started building. By the late 1800s and early 1900s, homework had powerful enemies, and not just children groaning into desks. Adults were angry too. Parents worried school was swallowing family life. Doctors and reformers worried too much studying harmed children's health. This was an era very concerned about nerves, fresh air, and whether modern life was crushing the young. Homework became a symbol of school overreach. In 1900, Ladies' Home Journal published an attack with an incredible title, "A National Crime at the Feet of Parents." That's not a mild complaint. That's the magazine equivalent of flipping a table. The argument was simple. Children already spent hours in school. Dragging schoolwork into the evening was unfair, unhealthy, and unnecessary. And then the backlash did something that sounds impossible from here. It won. In 1901, California banned homework for students under 15. Yes, for a while, homework for younger students wasn't just unpopular, it was literally against the rules in California. Imagine being a child in 1901 and hearing the state say, "Absolutely not, go outside." Civilization had peaked. And California wasn't alone in the mood, even if its ban is the headline moment. Across the country, many schools and communities softened homework or questioned whether it belonged in childhood at all. For decades, homework wasn't the unquestioned fact of life it often feels like today. The pendulum had swung hard the other way. The kids, briefly, had a pretty good case. But pendulums don't retire on your preferred side. They swing back. And the thing that swung homework back wasn't a teacher. It was a beeping metal ball in space. On October 4th, 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth. It was small, it was shiny, it beeped, and it scared the United States out of its chair. Because Sputnik wasn't just a science achievement, it was a political message with antennas. If the Soviets could put a satellite in orbit, what else could they do? Were American schools falling behind? Were students too soft? Were we losing the future in math and science? And in a national panic, there's one educational lever adults love to pull: more work. Homework came roaring back as part of a broader push for tougher academic standards, especially in science and math. The logic was blunt. If the rival superpower is winning in space, your child should probably do more algebra. So you can't blame Roberto Nevilis for that math packet due Monday. But emotionally, you can blame a beach ball-sized Soviet satellite going beep beep over Kansas. But Sputnik wasn't the last swing of the pendulum. And that's what makes the history useful. Homework doesn't just rise because educators calmly agree on the evidence. It rises when the country gets scared. National panic, homework spike. The pattern is almost too clean. After the Sputnik surge, the 1960s and 1970s brought another backlash. The culture shifted. Education got more interested in creativity, student well-being, and less rigid schooling. Homework softened again in many places. Then, in 1983, the panic siren turned back on, with A Nation at Risk. The report warned American education was in serious trouble. This fear wasn't just military, it was economic. The United States worried it was losing ground, especially to Japan. And once again, one answer appeared: more rigor, more standards, more homework. So the story isn't homework was banned, Sputnik brought it back, and everyone shrugged forever. The story is a repeating reflex. When adults fear the nation is falling behind, children get extra worksheets. Which brings us to now. Homework feels permanent because most of us grew up inside the rhythm. School assigns, home completes, tomorrow collects. Repeat until backpack becomes sedimentary rock. But modern research on homework is more lukewarm than the cultural confidence around it. It can be useful for older students, especially when purposeful and not endless. For young kids, the benefits are much less convincing. That's why you sometimes hear the 10-minute rule, roughly 10 minutes per grade level per night. Not because the universe carved it into stone, but because at some point, more homework becomes less like learning and more like paperwork with smaller shoes. The weird thing is that homework keeps a moral glow. If a student works late, that looks serious. If a school assigns more, that looks rigorous. If a parent complains, it can sound anti-education. But a lot of what we call rigor is inherited anxiety. A little Prussian discipline, a little American ambition, a little Cold War reflex, and a lot of habit. So the next time you're up late finishing an assignment, I have bad news. You can't even blame Roberto Nevilis. He never existed. You have to blame a much less convenient pile of historical forces. Blame Prussia for turning school into a discipline machine. Blame Horace Mann for admiring the machine and helping bring its ideas to America. Blame the early 20th century reformers for almost defeating homework. They're the ones who called it a national crime at the feet of parents. Blame Sputnik for beeping everyone into a panic. Blame A Nation at Risk for reminding America that fear is a fantastic worksheet generator. And blame us, a little, for keeping old reflexes around after we forget where they came from. Honestly, blaming one fake Italian man was easier. At least Roberto Nevilis fit on a flashcard. If you had no idea homework was once treated like an actual national crime, there's a lot more hiding inside the boring stuff around you. So take a second glance. Subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.